Hello and welcome to this exploring session. It's a new week. It's full of new adventures, and we're starting some John Lyly. We've been dancing around John Lyly for ages. It's taken us a while to get scripts together, and almost all of the Lyly scripts have been pulled together thanks to the assistance of Helen, who's been doing lots of text wrangling with Lyly over the last few months. So we finally got into a situation where we can do some John Lyly, and we're starting with one of his earliest plays that we have, Campaspe, by John Lyly, oddly enough. And the other reason why we've struggled to be doing any John Lyly is they do require quite large casts. These are plays for children of the Chapel Royal at this point. It's around 1584 people. And they're not desperately long plays, which is quite nice about these boy plays, is that they actually have a relatively limited time period in which they can cram their drama in. So most of the texts tend to be quite manageable. We're doing this over 2 sessions this week, 2 sessions for this play, and there's a lot to cram in, and we have a lot of people to introduce. So without further ado, reading the title character, Campaspe today is...
Hello, I'm Gloria, and I'm an actor in London.
And reading Alexandra today is...
Aliki Chapple. I'm an actor, translator, and increasingly theatre maker based in Lancaster in the north of England.
Reading, and there's a lot of names we're going to be slightly dancey around in terms of pronunciation here. Psyllus and Anaxarchus, I'm going to say it like that for the moment, is read by...
Helen Good. I'm a historian and I'm in Yorkshire.
Reading Manes and Cleanthes today is...
Hi, I'm Lynn. I am a college writing teacher. I live in the northwestern United States.
Reading Hephaestion and Mellippus today is...
Hello, I'm Sarah Blake. I'm an actor, writer and director living in Germany.
Reading Clytus and Chrysippus today is...
Hi, I'm Eric, and I recently discovered a series that is in Latin and German, and I have no idea, I don't speak either of those languages, but I'm fascinated.
Excellent. Reading, there are 2 prologues to this play. Reading one of them, the prologue at court, as well as playing Plato, is...
I am Lois. I'm a retired academic, happily living in London.
And reading the other prologue at Blackfriars, Granichus and Crates today is...
Alexandra, and I can barely say my own name most days, so this is going to be fun.
Yeah, there's some real fun ones. Timoclea, Aristotle and Appelles today is read by...
Oh, I'm Emma Kemp. I'm an actor and I live in London.
And reading Parmenio and Page today is...
Hello, my name's Elizabeth Amisu and I'm an author living in Romford.
And reading Diogenes today is...
Hi, I'm Alan Scott. I'm neither an actor nor an academic, and I'm living in a tub in Suffolk.
Yes, we had to drag him out of the bath. Though for all we know, it's literally underneath him now. That's the great advantage of Zoom. And I'm your host, Robert Crighton, and I'm just really going to pull it out there that really no idea how to pronounce many of these names, and I'm to a large degree not trying. So do not take anything that I say as actually right. Don't do that. Just you decide at home. So we're going to start with a couple of prologues. Lily's prologues are really quite interesting. I say that in advance, I have no idea. So we're going to start with the prologue at the Blackfriars. So Alexandra, could you give us prologue number 1, please?
They that fear the stinging of wasps make fans of peacock tails, whose spots are like eyes. And Lepidus, which could not sleep for the chatting of birds, set up a beast whose head was like a dragon. And we which stand in awe of report are compelled to set before our owl Pallas' shield, thinking by her virtue to cover the other's deformity. It was a sign of famine to Egypt when Nilus flowed less than 12 cubits or more than 18, and it may threaten despair unto us if we be less curious than you look for, or more cumbersome. But as Theseus, being promised to be brought to an eagle's nest, and travelling all the day, found but a wren in a hedge, yet said, this is a bird. So we hope, if the shower of our swelling mountain seem to bring forth some elephant before but a mouse, you will gently say, this is a beast. Basil, softly touched, yieldeth a sweet scent, but chafed in the hand a rank savour. We fear even so that our labours, slyly glanced on, will breed some content, but examined on the proof, small commendation. The haste in performing shall be our excuse. There went 2 nights to the begetting of Hercules. Feathers appear not on a phoenix under 7 months, and the mulberry is 12 in budding. But our travails are like the hares, who at one time bringeth forth, nourisheth, and engendereth again, or like the brood of Trochilus, whose eggs, in the same moment that they are laid, become birds. But howsoever we finish our work, we crave pardon if we offend in matter, and patience if we transgress in manners. We have mixed mirth with counsel, and discipline with delight, thinking it not amiss in the same garden to sow pot herbs that we set flowers. But we hope, as harts that cast their horns, snakes their skins, eagles their bills, become a more fresh for any other labour, so our charge being shaken off, we shall be fit for greater matters. But least like the Mindians, we make our gates greater than our town, and that, but lest like the Mindians, we make our gates greater than our town, and that our play runs out at the preface, we here conclude, wishing that, although there be in your precise judgments an universal mislike, yet we may enjoy by your wonted courtesies a general silence.
If you don't like the play, don't boo. There's a lot of that prologue, but there are lots of really nice things in that. I do love a prologue that goes, don't be too mean. We were in a hurry. We didn't have much rehearsal time. This is all a bit rushed. It's as good as it's gonna get, you know. Please be nice. Please be nice. So this is for public performance. This is what this prologue is designed for. It's doing all sorts of interesting things. Thoughts from the room briefly. We're not going to hang around on these prologues too long because we're so not going to use most of them. Lynn, then Gloria.
Maybe it's just me because it's quite early in the morning where I am, and maybe my neurons aren't firing yet. But it's like parts of this read like a Mad Lib. Like what does Peacock's feather? What? What's the thing about the wren?
Gloria.
I love the line that says, our labours, we fear that our labours slyly glanced on will breed some content. It's basically saying, if you look through one eye from really far away, then you're going to think, well, that's not bad. Please don't look up close.
Yes, don't spend any long-term critical analysis on this work. It's not deep enough for that. Please just enjoy it. Just sit back. You know, this is a bird. This is a beast. There's some lovely bits in this. Alexandra, how was it for you? I mean, obviously it was sort of coming at you.
Yeah, I really liked the I guess the trope that it's employing, whereby it's basically going like that thing that is really cool. We, in much less sort, are, so that the Theseus, an eagle's nest, and then this is a bird to, well, if we try and show you an elephant and it's played by a mouse, just say it's a beast. Those sort of things I really loved. This is to that like we are to this other thing. And yes, I think it's the point that it's making it, well, the fact that it is overly long is part of the joke. Right.
Yeah, and I think it's really quite charming. I mean, it does flow quite nicely. I mean, whether I'm going to be throwing things at the audience, the cast later, I don't know. Will I keep silent, Lois?
Yeah, I suppose part of the point is that these aren't boys, and it's all about we're small. This is small compared to the great things that other people do. Be nice to us. We're children.
Yes, and then we get to the cuteness aspect as well, don't we, Eric?
I can't help but wonder if there's like references to like comedy, because Wasps is a comedy by Aristophanes, and like all that's like there's loads of like The Birds is also a comedy. And that kind of stuff. I don't know, just wondering there.
It does seem to be dancing around certain aspects of learning. It's a demonstration of learning as well, which again might be part to do with these younglings' education. I think we need to move on to the next one. This is the prologue at the court. So this is for a slightly different audience. Let's see what the difference between these two prologues are.
We are ashamed that our bird, which fluttered by twilight, seeming a swan, should be proved a bat set against the sun. But as Jupiter placed Silenus' ass among the stars, and Alcibiades covered his pictures, being owls and apes, with a curtain embroidered with lions and eagles, so are we enforced upon a rough discourse to draw on a smooth excuse, resembling lapidaries who think to hide the crack in a stone by setting it deep in gold. The gods supped once with poor Bacchus. The Persian kings sometimes shaved sticks. Our hope is your highness will at this time lend an ear to an idle pastime. Appian, raising Homer from hell, demanded only who was his father, and we, calling Alexander from his grave, seek only who was his love. Whatsoever we present, we wish it may be thought the dancing of Agrippa's shadows, who in the moment they were seen were of any shape one would conceive, or lynxes who, having a quick sight to discern, have a short memory to forget. With us it is like to fare as with these torches, which, giving light to others, consume themselves, and we, showing delight to others, shame ourselves.
Yeah, it's just it started in a very similar vein, and then it does shift quite differently. And our hope is your highness will at this time lend an ear. So we know who's in. No pressure, people. Queen's popped in for a bit of fun. So yeah, it's got a slightly different tone, but as I say, there's lots of learning again being displayed, lots of classical references being thrown in, and yeah, it's an interesting one. Any thoughts on this one in contrast with the last one, or just in its own right, Eric?
Well, this one actually tells you what it's about. It's like about Alexander, whereas the previous one didn't have any of that.
No.
Yeah, hints at plot. Aliki.
I think that might lean towards your suggestion that the first one could be played for laughs. Yes, I'm about to finish the prologue. I'm not. I have more to say. Because, well, you wouldn't play with a royal audience like that, and nor would you say, oh, sorry, it's not perfect. Instead, you say, thank your greatness for paying attention to our humble thing.
Well, yes. I mean, the logic would be you do the Blackfriars performances of Blackfriars so that you are ready for the Queen. I mean, that's basically the excuse for all performance. Is broadly speaking that at some point it's all a rehearsal for when you perform before a royalty. In practice it isn't, but that's the theory. Other thoughts before we move into the play itself, the stuff that we might actually perform today? Helen.
Yes, I've seen not this play, but another Lyly, where they played both prologues, one after another, read by the same person. And he said the prologue at the Blackfriars, then gave the prologue at the Blackfriars, then said the prologue at the court, and knelt. It was very funny.
Yes, I think we were there at the same time. We will move into the play itself then. So we will go into Act 1, Scene 1, and it's a little two people having a chat. It's enter Clytus and Parmenio.
Parmenio, I cannot tell whether I should more commend in Alexander's victories, courage, or courtesy, in the one being resolution without fear, in the other a liberality above custom. Thebes is razed, the people not racked, towers thrown down, bodies not thrust aside, a conquest without conflict, and a cruel war in a mild peace.
Titus, it becometh the son of Philip to be none other than Alexander is. Therefore, seeing in the father full of affection, who could have doubted in the son an excellency? For as the moon can borrow nothing else of the sun but light, so of a sire in whom nothing but virtue was, what could the child receive but singular? It is for turkeys to sustain each other, not for diamondes. In the one to be made a difference in goodness, in the other no comparison.
You mistake me, Parmenio, if whilst I command Alexander, you imagine I call Philip into question. Unless haply you conjecture, which of none of judgment will conceive, that because I like the fruit, therefore I heave at the tree, or coveting to kiss the child, I therefore go about to poison the teat.
Aye, but Clytus, as you perceive you are born in the east, and so never laugh but at the sun rising, which argues through a duty where you ought, yet no great devotion where you might.
We will make no controversy of that which there ought to be no question. Only this shall be the opinion of us both, that none was worthy to be the father of Alexander but Philip, nor any meet to be the son of Philip but Alexander.
Stop, Clytus. Behold the spoils and prisoners, a pleasant sight to us, because profit is joined with honor, not much painful to them, because their captivity is eased by mercy.
And enter Timoclea, Campaspe, with other captives and spoils guarded, etc.
Fortune, thou didst never yet deceive virtue, because virtue never yet did trust fortune. Sword and fire will never get spoil, where wisdom and fortitude bear sway. O Thebes, thy walls were raised by the sweetness of the harp, but raced by the shrillness of the trumpet. Alexander had never come so near the walls, had Epaminondas walked about the walls, and yet might the Thebans have been merry in their streets, if he had been to watch their towers. But destiny is seldom foreseen, never prevented. We are here now, captives, whose necks are yoked by force, but whose hearts cannot over by death. Come, Campaspe and the rest, let us not be ashamed to cast our eyes on him, on whom we feared not to cast our darts.
Madame, you need not doubt it. It is Alexander that is the conqueror.
Alexander hath overcome, not conquered.
To bring all under his subjection is to conquer.
He cannot subdue that which is divine.
It was not.
Virtue is.
Alexander, as he tendereth virtue, so he will you. He drinketh not blood, but thirsteth after honor. He is greedy of victory, but never gets satisfied with mercy. In fight terrible as becometh a captain. In conquest mild as beseemeth a king. In all things in which nothing can be greater, he is Alexander.
Then if it be such a thing to be Alexander, I hope it shall be no miserable things to be a virgin. For if he save our honours, it is more than to restore our goods. And rather do I wish he preserve our fame than our lives, which if he do, we will confess there can be no greater thing than to be Alexander.
And having said his name many a time, now enter Alexander and Hephaestion attendants, other people as well, probably.
Clytus, are these prisoners? Of whence these spoils?
Like your majesty, they are prisoners and of Thebes.
Of what calling or reputation?
I know not, but they seem to be ladies of honor.
I will know. Madam, of whence you are I know, but who I cannot tell.
Alexander, I am the sister of Diogenes, who fought a battle with thy father before the city of Chaeronea, where he died, I say, which none can gainsay, valiantly.
Lady, there seem in your words sparks of your brother's deeds, but worse her fortune in your life than his death. But fear not, for you shall live without violence, enemies, or necessity. But what are you, fair lady? Another sister to Diogenes?
No sister to Diogenes, but an humble handmaid to Alexander, born of a mean parentage, but to extreme fortune.
Well, ladies, for so your virtues show you, whatsoe'er your births be, you shall be honorably entreated. Athens shall be your Thebes, and you shall not be as abjects of war, but as subjects to Alexander. Parmenio, conduct these honorable ladies into the city. Charge the soldiers not so much as in words to offer them any offense, and let all wants be supplied, so far forth it shall be necessary for such persons and my prisoners.
And exeunt Parmenio with the captives.
Hephaestion, it resteth now that we have as great care to govern in peace as conquer in war. That whilst arms cease, arts may flourish, and joining letters with lances, we endeavor to be as good philosophers as soldiers, knowing it no less praise to be wise than commendable to be valiant.
Your majesty therein showeth that you have as great desire to rule as to subdue, and needs must that commonwealth be fortunate, whose captain is a philosopher, and whose philosopher is a captain.
And exeunt, and we'll pause there at the end of this sort of introductory gambit. We're meeting lots of big name parts here. We've got the title character has popped in. Is not in the best of sorts, having been captured by Alexander, who is talking about a major arts festival following such following a time of terrible destruction and things. Little thought. Any thoughts about what the mode of this play, how it's coming across? This is our opening gambit, really. We've done a lot of prologuing. How's the action landing for us? Aliki first.
I gave you Alexander the bureaucrat because it seems like a very bureaucratic kind of process. Okay, so who are these? What do they do? Let's treat them decently that way. You go there, you do that. And it's interesting, right? Because we expect to see the great hero before the battle being noble and glorious, not afterwards making sure that the prisoners don't get rude words shouted at them in the streets. I think it's bureaucratic. That's my word.
Yeah, it's the admin. Nobody talks about the paperwork after these things, do they? Lois.
I think my word would be exemplary. I mean, everybody is behaving exactly as the best example of that type should behave. I mean, his soldiers and courtiers are both polite, enthusiastic about him, and brave. His captives are brave and long-suffering, and he's going to behave beautifully to everybody. It's such a nice, refreshing atmosphere after a lot of the plays we've been living in.
Yeah, I mean, there's something really interesting here, because these two characters coming on at the beginning, going, "Oh, Thebes is raised, the people not racked." Towers thrown down, bodies not thrust aside. This is not like some commanders we've met. Whoa, it's really interesting. Sarah, I saw a hand earlier.
Yeah, I was sort of going to say what Lois said. It's kind of refreshing. And I was also you reminded of that saying, don't, if you want to see what a man is really like, don't judge him by how he treats his peers, but how he treats the people who he believes are underneath him. And if you take that in the context of war, your opponents on the battlefield are your peers, and the underlings are the people in the town that you invade, in the city you invade or whatever, and your prisoners. So this is quite a nice little psychological picture of Alexander, really, isn't it? It's not perhaps what we're used to thinking of, but it shows that he has a certain amount of empathy that isn't kind of the quality that he's known for.
It's people who have the words "the great" after their name do not tend to be great.
Great, exactly.
So it's refreshing. Helen.
Yes, I mean, we know him as a great, as Alexander the Great, the conqueror of the known world. But in fact, he was a philosopher king. He had a tremendous amount of training in how to be a philosopher. I mean, he was educated by Aristotle. And he had an enormous amount of theory of governance.
Any additional thoughts? We're only one scene in. I feel we've possibly been overdoing it so early. But hey, good stuff. Just think a few years down the line, we'll get Tamburlaine the Great. It'll be quite different. A few years away yet. So let's go to Act 1, Scene 2, and we have the entrance of Manes, Granichus, and Psyllus. I'll go with Psyllus for now.
I serve, instead of a master, a mouse, whose house is a tub, whose dinner is a crust, and whose bed is a board.
Then art thou in a state of life which philosophers commend. A crumb for thy supper, a hand for thy cup, and thy clothes for thy sheets. For nature paucis contenta.
Manes, it is pity so proper a man should be cast away upon a philosopher. But that Diogenes, that dog, should have Manes, that dog bolt, it grieveth nature and spiteth art. The one having found thee so dissolute, absolute, I would say, in body, the other so singular in mind.
Are you merry? It is a sign by the trip of your tongue and the toys of your head that you have done that today which I have not done these 3 days.
What's that?
Dined.
I think Diogenes keeps but cold cheer.
I would it were so, but he keepeth neither hot nor cold.
What then, lukewarm? That made Manes run from his master last day.
Manes had reason, for his name foretold as much.
My name? How, sir boy?
I know that it is called Mons a Movendo, because it stands still.
Good.
And thou art named Manes a Manendo, because thou runnest away.
Passing reasons. I did not run away, but retire.
To prison, because thou wouldst have leisure to contemplate.
I will prove that my body was immortal because it was in prison.
As how?
Did your masters never teach you that the soul is immortal?
Yes.
And the body is the prison of the soul?
True.
Why then, thus, to make my body immortal, I put it to prison.
Oh, bad.
Excellent, Ill.
You may see how dull fasting wit is. Before Psyllus, let us go to supper with Granichus. Plato is the best fellow of all philosophers. Give me him that reads in the mornings in the school and at noon in the kitchen.
And me.
Ah, sirs, my master is a king in his parlour for the body, and a god in his study for the soul. Among all his men he commendeth one that is an excellent musician. Then stand I by and clap another on the shoulder and say, this is a passing good cook.
It is well done, Granichus. Aye, forgive me pleasure that goes in at the mouth, not the ear. I'd rather fill my guts than my brains.
I serve Appelles, who feedeth me as Diogenes doth Manes. For at dinner the one preacheth abstinence, the other commendeth counterfeiting. When I would eat meat, he paints a spit. And when I thirst, he says, "Oh," saith he, is not this a fair pot?" And points at a table which contains the banquet of the gods, where so many dishes to feed the eye, but not to fill the gut.
What dost thou then?
This doth he then bring in many examples, that some have lived by savours, and proveth that much easier it is to fat by colours, and tells of birds that have been fatted by painted grapes in winter, and how many have so fed their eyes with their mistress's picture that they never desired to take food, being glutted with the delight in their favours. Then doth he show me counterfeits, such as have surfeited with their filthy and loathsome vomits, and with the riotous bacchanals of the god Bacchus and his disorderly crew, which are painted all to the life in his shop. To conclude, exclude, I fare hardly, though I go richly, which maketh me, when I should begin to shadow a lady's face, to draw a lamb's head, and sometimes to set to the body of a maid a shoulder of mutton. For semper anibus mens est in patinis.
Thou art a god to me, for could I see but a cook's shop painted, I would make mine eyes fat as butter. But I have not but sentences to fill my maw, as plures occidit crapula quam glottis musa jejunatibus amica. Repletion killeth delicately, and the old saw of abstinence, Socrates, the belly is the head's grave. Thus with sayings, not with meat, he maketh a gallimaufry.
But how dost thou then live?
With fine jests, sweet air, and the dog's alms.
Well, for this time I will staunch my gut, and among pots and platters thou shalt see what it is to see Plato.
For joy of Granichus, let us sing.
My voice is as clear in the evening as in the morning.
Another commodity of emptiness.
And here there is a song. You don't need to sing it. Go with the part you've been given, though there is potentially one division that is not correct. But we'll go with it for now.
Oh, for a bowl of fat canary, rich Palermo, sparkling sherry, some nectar else from Juno's dairy. Oh, these draughts would make us merry.
Oh, for a wench ideal in faces and in other daintier things. Tickled am I with her embraces, fine dancing in such fairy rings.
Oh, for a plump fat leg of mutton, veal, lamb, capon, pig, and coney. None is happy but a glutton, none in us but who wants money.
Wines, indeed, and girls are good, but brave victuals feast the blonde. For wenches, wine, and lusty cheer, love would leap down to surfeit here.
And they exit. Yes, so that last stanza, that might be a chorus, everybody singing all together. That might be a chorus that's returning throughout the text. Feast the blood. So much fun. It's a fun, witty scene. Oh, the life of servants to philosophers. And it really depends which philosophy you get, because, you know, they've got very different approaches to food. And what servants get out of their time, and some of them are not, and they sort of inherit different sort of games of wit and verbal play, and I suspect there's an awful lot here that is slightly above our pay grade of understanding. I feel that there's a lot of cleverness here that's just possibly just going shumph over my head. I'm reminded of the unfortunate servant in Damon and Pythias, who basically gets fed nothing, just gets fed wit, and he's a miserable. He's a very unhappy servant. Eric.
Well, or the guy from last week who kept like coming and going and sort of like never getting any sleep.
Yeah. Poor chap. That was in the Bugbears, which we highly recommend. It was great fun. Video available on the YouTube channel. Other thoughts about the wit of servants and what's going on in this? It's in a sense, very little actually happens here. It just seems to be a display of verbal fencing. Sarah, you're muted at the moment.
It's interesting within the context of the last scene because Lyly seems to enjoy showing us what goes on behind the curtain. We didn't have Alexander waging war. We had him, sorting out his admin, and now we haven't got the philosophers. We've got the servants like snarking about them down in the kitchen. So yeah, it makes it really human. I mean, I knew this play was about Alexander the Great. That was all I knew about it, and I was thinking, oh, this is going to be quite battly, and it's not. It's really witty and funny and human, which is great. And
Lynn.
Yeah, there's an interesting contrast between the scenes too. The first one is kind of ceremonial and everyone's very dignified and honorable, and then you get the poor servants that's just like, I haven't had a decent meal in 3 days. So the tone is very different. So we've got that contrast as well.
Other thoughts? Oh, Aliki, then Alexandra.
Just very quickly, I'm still laughing at the thought of Diogenes having a servant, right?
Someone's got to clean the tub. Reach on down there. Alexandra.
I think relating to what you were saying earlier, I think part of the joke is the various philosophies espoused by the people who are the masters and how that relates to the various reasons for not feeding their servants. The effect is the same, but the philosophy behind it is very important.
Oh yes. Yeah. Other thoughts before we move on to the next scene? And whoever's speaking in the next scene might be wishing to delay this as long as possible. Whoever's reading Mellippus might want to drag this out a little longer. Maybe not. So Act 1, Scene 3. Enter Mellippus.
I had never such ado to warn scholars to come before a king. First I came to Chrysippus, a tall, lean old madman, willing him presently to appear before Alexander. He stood staring on my face, neither moving his eyes nor his body. I, urging him to give some answer, he took up a book, sat down, and said nothing. Melissa, his maid, told me it was his manner, and that oft times she was fain to thrust meat into his mouth, for that he would rather starve than cease study. Well, thought I, seeing bookish men are so blockish, and so great clerks such simple courtiers, I will neither be partaker of their commons nor their commendations. From thence I came to Plato and to Aristotle and to divers other, none refusing to come, save an old obscure fellow who, sitting in a tub, turned towards the sun, read Greek to a young boy. Him, when I willed to appear before Alexander, he answered, if Alexander would fain see me, let him come to me. If learn of me, let him come to me. Whatsoever it be, let him come to me. Why, said I, he is a king. He answered, why, I am a philosopher. Why, but he is Alexander. Aye, but I am Diogenes. I was half angry to see one so crooked in his shape, to be so crabbed in his sayings. So, going my way, I said, thou shalt repent it if thou comest not to Alexander. Nay, smiling answered he, Alexander may repent it if he comes not to Diogenes. Virtue must be sought and not offered. And so, turning himself to his heel, he grunted, for I know not what, like a pig under a tub. But I must be gone. The philosophers are coming.
And exits the poor Mellippus, who's having such a terrible day. Enter the what's the collective noun for a group of philosophers? Enter Plato, Aristotle, Cleanthes, Anaxarchus, Crates, and Chrysippus.
It is a difficult controversy, Aristotle, and rather to be wondered at than believed, how natural causes should work supernatural effects.
I do not so much stand upon the apparition as seen in the moon, neither the daemonium of Socrates, as that I cannot by natural reason give any reason of the ebbing and flowing of the sea, which makes me, in the depth of my studies, to cry out, "O ens entium miserere me!"
Cleanthes and you attribute so much to nature by searching for things which are not to be found, that whilst you study a cause of your own, you omit the occasion itself. There is no man so savage in whom resteth not this divine particle, that there is an omnipotent, eternal, and divine mover, which may be called God.
I am of the mind that the first mover, which you term God, is the instrument of all the movings which we attribute to nature. The earth, which is mass, swimmeth on the sea, seasons divided in themselves, fruits growing in themselves, the majesty of the sky, the whole firmament of the world, and whatsoever else appeareth miraculous, what man almost of mean capacity, but can prove it natural.
These causes shall be debated at our philosophers' feast, in which controversy I will take part with Aristotle, that there is natura naturans, and yet not God.
And I with Plato, that there is Deus optimus maximus, and not nature.
Here cometh Alexander.
Indeed, enter Alexander, Hephaestion, Parmenio, and Clytus.
I see, Hephaestion, that these philosophers are here attending for us.
They were not philosophers if they knew not their duties.
But I much marvel Diogenes should be so dogged.
I do not think but his excuse will be better than Mellippus's message.
I will go see him, Hephaestion. I long to see him that would command Alexander to come, to whom all the world is like to come. Aristotle and the rest offence my coming from Thebes to Athens, from a place of conquest to a place of quiet. I have resolved with myself in my court to have as many philosophers as I had in my camp soldiers. My court shall be a school, wherein I will have used as great doctrine in peace as I did in war discipline.
We are all here ready to be commanded, and glad we are that we are commanded. For that nothing better becometh kings than literature, which maketh them come as near to the gods in wisdom as they do in dignity.
It is so, Aristotle. But yet there is among you, yea, and of your bringing up, that sought to destroy Alexander, Callisthenes. Aristotle, whose treasons against his prince shall not be borne out with the reasons of his philosophy.
If ever mischief entered into the heart of Callisthenes, let Callisthenes suffer for it. But that Aristotle ever imagined any such thing of Callisthenes, Aristotle doth deny.
Well, Aristotle, kindred may blind thee, and affection me. But in king's causes I will not stand to scholars' arguments. This meeting shall be for a commandment, that you all frequent my court, instruct the young with rules, confirm the old with reasons. Let your lives be answerable to your learnings, lest my proceedings by contrary to my promises.
You said you would ask every one of them a question, which yesternight none of us could answer.
I will. Plato, of all beasts, which is the subtlest?
That which man hitherto never knew.
Aristotle, how should a man be thought a god?
In doing a thing unpossible for a man.
Chrysippus, which was first, the day or the night?
The day by a day.
Indeed, strange questions must have strange answers. Cleanthes, what say you? Is life or death the stronger?
Life that suffereth so many troubles.
Crates, how long should a man live?
Till he think it better to die than live.
Anaxarchus, whether doth the sea or the earth bring forth most creatures?
The earth, for the sea is but a part of the earth.
Hephaestion, methinks they have answered all well. And in such questions I mean often to try them.
It is better to have in your court a wise man than in your ground a golden mine. Therefore would I leave war to study wisdom, were I Alexander.
So would I, were I Hephaestion. But come, let us go and give release, as I promised, to our Theban thralls.
And exit Alexander and his various people.
Thou art fortunate, Aristotle, that Alexander is thy scholar.
And you happy that he is your sovereign.
I could like the man well, if he could be contented to be but a man.
He seeketh to draw near to the gods in knowledge, not to be a god.
Let us question a little with Diogenes why he went not with us to Alexander. Diogenes, thou didst forget thy duty that thou wentest not with us to the king.
And you, your profession, that you went to the king.
Thou takest as great pride to be peevish as others do glory to be virtuous.
And thou as great honour being a philosopher, to be thought court-like, as others shame that be courtiers, to be accounted philosophers.
These austere manners set aside, it is well known that thou didst counterfeit money.
And thou thy manners, in that thou didst not counterfeit money.
Thou hast reason to contemn the court, being both in body and mind too crooked for a courtier.
It's good to be crooked and endeavour to make myself straight from the court as to be straight and learn to be crooked at the court.
Thou thinkst it is a grace to be opposite against Alexander.
And thou to be jump with Alexander.
Let's go, for in condemning him we shall better please him than in wondering at him.
Plato, what dost thou think of Diogenes?
To be Socrates furious. Let us go.
And exit all the philosophers. It's that question of how is Diogenes discovered there? Have they just put a tablecloth over him the whole time? And also just the question of, Alexander saying, I want as many, philosophers in my campus as soldiers. And I'm going, yeah, give it a week, mate. Give it a week. He'll be crying. I've had enough of experts very soon. Helen.
In the text that I got, which had a lot of modern stage directions which I removed, they were constantly dragging on and throughout the play, dragging on and dragging out this blasted tub. And it struck me that it was either going to be a laugh every time, or else the tub was in fact on stage the whole time, with Diogenes is in the bottom of it or crept out through a hole in the back and just popping up as and when required.
Yeah, it's feeling very Grouch Sesame Street territory here, isn't it? It's a dustbin and the lid comes up, kind of thing. Lynn.
That would be hilarious, the Oscar the Grouch thing. I was just going to say, I've seen a production of Mother Bombi, which is also Lyly, yes?
Yes.
In a Blackfriars style setting. And they made a lot of use of the discovery space, that little curtained space at the back. So maybe that's where Diogenes is. They just pull those curtains aside. There he is. They close them.
Yeah, in that sense, he doesn't get an entrance or exit note in the script, in the original scripts. He's always just starts speaking. So a decision needs to be made on that front. Once again, we have a scene with lots of witty repartee. We get to meet the philosophers. Philosophers have been nicely set up. They get to do a one-liner each in front of Alexandra, as well as I was joking about the length of Mellippus's sort of opening speech there, but actually it's rather a cracking speech, isn't it? It's just going, I went to get these people and oh God, how do you work with these people? And also I just love the way that you get to have, by having these other characters from the distant past, philosophers, you actually get to sneak in some tricksy bit of philosophizing about the nature of existence and the universe and God and stuff. Which is clever stuff to get away with that kind of open discussion. But it's all good stuff. Eric, did I see a hand waving?
I was just going to say that I was laughing earlier because there was a part about like the philosophers' banquet, and they all just go, as we've heard, they don't let their servants eat. So. Yeah, and also just because I remember Plato at school, it was like this whole thing of art is the art of imitation, and then therefore a table is not a table, it's the idea of a table, and just like it would just drive you insane. So I can imagine like having that over a banquet would just
there'd be a lot of running, but there wouldn't be much banquet. It's interesting. Yeah, all of this, it's just actually these characters have got to be quite annoying in a fun way, and it's an interesting balance as to how precisely, because they do there is genuine philosophy going on here, but also there is the fact that they are all a bit pretentious as well. And it's fun. It's quite fun. That was Act 1, by the way, people. We have now finished Act 1. General thoughts before we move into Act 2. Anyone want to leap in? No, it's a Monday. I can tell. I can see it all on your faces. It's a Monday. And
we've said it all already, right? It's very witty. It's about ideas and ideals. It's all wordplay and showing off learning.
Excellent. Sarah, muted at present.
It's reminding me of an old coward play, which is not something I was expecting to experience today. But that's, it's because like you say, everyone's like very witty and pretentious, very clever. And they're all sort of standing around talking and there's not a lot of action. I actually love plays like that. So, but yeah, it's just like, unexpected.
Oh, thou art fortunate, Aristotle, that Alexander is thy scholar.
Exactly.
And you happy that he is your sovereign. Yes. I can see that working, actually. Everybody in dressing gowns. Okay. Okay, let's go into Act 2 then. We are... that stage right there. That looks like a later edition. Okay, Act 2, Scene 1. We have the entrance of Diogenes. He's presumably still in his tub. He may have other accoutrements on stage with him. And we have return, I think, of... These are the servants, aren't they? Psyllus, Manes, and Granichus, I think. Am I right on that? I can't be wrong. I could be wrong. Who knows? Anyway, Psyllus, Manes, and Granichus.
Behold, Manes, where thy master is, seeking either for bones for his dinner or pins for his sleeve. I will go salute him.
Do so, but mum, not a word you saw Manes.
Then stay thou behind, and I will go with Psyllus.
All hail, Diogenes, to your proper person.
All hate to thy peevish conditions.
Oh, dog.
What dost thou seek for here?
For a man and a beast.
That is easy, without thy light to be found. Be not all these men?
Called men.
What beast is it thou look'st for?
The beast, my man, Manes.
He's a beast indeed that will serve thee.
So is he that begat thee.
What wouldst thou do if thou shouldst find Manes?
Give him leave to do as he hath done before.
What's that?
To run away.
Why, hast thou no need of Manes?
It were a shame for Diogenes to have need of Manes. So for Manes to have no need of Diogenes.
But put the case he were gone, wouldst thou entertain any of us too?
Upon condition
What?
that you should tell me wherefore any of you both were so good.
Why, I am a scholar, and well seen in philosophy.
And I apprentice, and well seen in painting.
Well then, Granichus, be thou painter to amend thine ill face, and thou, Psyllus, a philosopher to correct thine evil manners. But who is that? Manners?
I care not who I were, so I were not Manes.
You are taken tardy.
Let us slip aside, Granichus, to see the salutation between Manes and his master.
Manes, thou knowest the last day I threw away my dish to drink in my hand because it was superfluous. Now I am determined to put away my man and serve myself. Quia non ego tui velte.
Master, you know a while ago I ran away. So do I mean to do again. Quia scio tibi non esse argentum.
I know I have no money, neither will I have ever a man, for I was resolved long since to put away both my slaves, money and Manes.
So was I determined to shake off both my dog's hunger and Diogenes.
Oh, sweet consent between a crowd and a Jew's heart.
Come, let us reconcile them.
It shall not need, for this is their new use. Now they dine upon one upon another.
And exit Diogenes in some fashion.
How now, Manes, art thou gone from thy master?
No, I did but now bind myself to him.
Why, you were at mortal jars.
In faith, no, we break a bitter jest one upon the other.
Why, thou art as dogged as he.
My father knew them both, little whelps.
Well, I will hie me after my master.
Why, is it supper time with Diogenes?
Ay, with him at all times when he hath meat.
Why then, every man to his home, and let us steal out again anon.
Where shall we meet?
Why, at ali vendibile, suspensa hedera non opus.
O Sirius, habeo te loco parentis, thou blessed me.
And they exit. There's a few bits of Latin in here which are actually really quite clever and quite funny.
We'll
Which is a
take
shame
your
because,
word for it.
well, no. If Diogenes' dialogue with Manes there is he's basically saying, "I'm now determined to put away my man and serve myself. For I do not need you." And Manes goes, "Yes, I will run away again because I know you don't have any money." And that's very roughly what they're actually saying to each other, and the way it's phrased is because it's in Latin, we're not sort of getting any of that.
Yeah.
So it's actually there's some good gags are sort of hidden away in there, which a modern audience sadly will not get, or at least most of them won't. Every so often someone will laugh. There'll be an awkward laugh from someone in the back who knows Latin and goes ha 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 ha. And everyone will turn around and look and just go, what? Lois.
Yeah, so are you going to translate the bit right at the end? Ali vendibili suspensa hedera nois opus.
I will find a footnote
I think
on that
that
one.
means they're going to meet at the pub, but I'm not sure.
So I don't know what Allah is, but the rest is the end of the proverb that says good wine doesn't need ivy.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
And the answer that Manes gives is, "Oh, I have you in place of parents. You bless me."
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. So the meeting at the pub. Yeah, good wine needs no bush. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. So there's lots of layers to this scene, which is a bit of a shame because they're layers which a modern audience is probably not going to get. And how do you get that across? Or do you just say it very quickly and move forward and hope for the best, which might be the solution? It's nice. It's servant relationship problems there with the master, who at the moment is feeling much more like Davros at every moment that passes. He's a miserable sod, isn't he? And just sort of wheels himself on and off. I want sort of as he goes off. I want to hear wheels, or very slow scratch. I don't know how he moves. You know, is it a sub with wheels? Yeah. So yeah, thoughts about the master-servant relationship going on here?
Well, we've only seen Diogenes. We haven't seen Psyllus and his painter, or Granichus, and he serves Plato, doesn't he?
Seen Plato.
So
Yeah, but
we've
not-
only seen the one relationship, which is sort of a bit like a bad marriage.
It is. It's hard to figure out because Manus is like, you can't fire me, I quit. And then he's like, oh, I guess I'll go after him.
Yes, and the others there. I do like. I am a scholar, well seen in philosophy. I'm an apprentice. I'm well seen in painting. I really like that. Okay, so shall we move on to Act 2, Scene 2? Unless anyone's got anything else. No. Okay. We're going back to Alexander. Enter Alexander, Hephaestion, and Page.
Stand aside, Sir Boy, till you be called. Hephaestion, how do you like the sweet face of Campaspe?
I cannot but commend the stout courage of Timoclea.
Without doubt, Campaspe has some great man to her father.
You know, Timoclea had Theagenes to her brother.
Timoclea still in thy mouth. Art thou not in love?
Not I.
Not with Timoclea, you mean? Wherein you resemble the lapwing who crieth most where her nest is not. And so you lead me from espying your love with Campaspe. You cry Timoclea.
Could I as well subdue kingdoms as I can my thoughts, or were I as far from ambition as I am from love, all the world would account me as valiant in arms as I know myself moderate in affection.
Is love a vice?
'Tis no virtue.
Well, now shalt thou see what small difference I make between Alexander and Hephaestion. And sith thou hast always been partaker of my triumphs, thou shalt be partaker of my torments. I love Hephaestion. I love Campaspe. A thing far unfit for a Macedonian, for a king, for Alexander. Why hangest thou thy head down, Hephaestion, blushing to hear that which I am not ashamed to tell?
Might my words crave pardon and my counsel credit, I would both discharge the duty of a subject, for so I am, and the office of a friend, for so I will.
Speak, Hephaestion, for whatsoever is spoken, Hephaestion speaketh to Alexander.
I cannot tell, Alexander, whether the report be more shameful to be heard or the cause sorrowful to be believed. What? Is the son of Philip, king of Macedon, become the subject of Campaspe, the captive of Thebes? Is that mind whose greatness the world could not contain, drawn within the compass of an idle, alluring eye? Will you handle the spindle with Hercules, when you should shake the spear with Achilles? Is the warlike sound of drum and trump turned to the soft noise of lyre and lute? The neighing of barbed steeds, whose loudness filled the air with terror, and whose breaths dimmed the sun with smoke, converted to delicate tunes and amorous glances? Oh, Alexander, that soft and hovering mind should not be in him whose hard and unconquered heart hath made so many over. But you love, oh, grief, but whom? Campaspe? Oh, shame. A maid, forsooth, unknown, unnoble, and who can tell whether immodest, whose eyes are framed by art to enamour, and whose heart was made by nature to enchant. Ay, but she is beautiful, yea, but not therefore chaste. Ay, but she is comely in all parts of the body, yea, but she may be crooked in some part of the mind. Ay, but she is wise, yea, but she is a woman. Beauty is like the blackberry, which seemeth red when it is not ripe, resembling precious stones that are polished with honey, which the smoother they look, the sooner they break. It is thought wonderful among the seamen that Mugel, of all fishes the swiftest, is found in the belly of the Brett, of all the slowest. And shall it not seem monstrous to wise men that the heart of the great conqueror of the world should be found in the hands of the weakest creature of nature, of a woman, of a captive? Ermines have fair skin, but foul livers, sepulchres fresh colours, but rotten bones, women fair faces, but false hearts. Remember, Alexander, thou hast a camp to govern, not a chamber. For not from the armour of Mars to the arms of Venus, from the fiery assaults of war to the maidenly skirmishes of love, from displaying the eagle in thine ensign to set down the sparrow. I sigh, Alexander, that when fortune could not conquer, folly should overcome. But behold all the perfection that may be in Campaspe, a hair curling by nature, not art, sweet alluring eyes, a fair face made in despite of Venus, and a stately port in disdain of Juno, a wit apt to conceive and quick to answer, a skin as soft as silk and as smooth as jet, a long white hand, a fine little foot, to conclude all parts answerable to the best part. What of this? Though she have heavenly gifts, virtue and beauty, is she not of earthly metal, flesh and blood? You, Alexander, that would be a god, show yourself in this worse than a man, so soon to be both overseen and overtaken in a womb, whose false tears know not their true times, whose smooth words wound deeper than sharp swords. There is no surfeit so dangerous as that of honey, nor any poison so deadly as that of love. In the one physic cannot prevail, nor in the other counsel.
My case were light, Hephaestion, and not worthy to be called love, if reason were a remedy, or sentences could solve, that sense cannot conceive. Little do you know, and therefore slightly do you so regard the dead embers in a private person, or live coals in a great prince, whose passions and thoughts do as far exceed others in extremity as their callings do in majesty. An eclipse in the sun is more than the falling of a star. None can conceive the torments of a king unless he be a king, whose desires are not inferior to their dignities. And then judge, Hephaestion, if the agonies of love be dangerous in a subject, whether they be not more than deadly unto Alexander, whose deep and not to be conceived sighs cleave the earth in shivers, whose wounded thoughts can neither be expressed nor endured. Cease then, Hephaestion, with arguments to seek to repel that which with their deity the gods cannot resist, and let this suffice to answer thee, that it is a king that loveth, and Alexander, whose affections are not to be measured by reason, being immortal, or I fear me to be born, being intolerable.
I must needs yield, when neither reason nor counsel can be heard.
Yield, Hephaestion, for Alexander doth love, and therefore must obtain.
Suppose she loves not you? Affection cometh not by appointment or birth, and then as good hatred as enforced.
I am a king and will command.
You may to yield to lust by force, but to consent to love by fear, you cannot.
Why, what is that which Alexander may not conquer as he list?
Why, that which you say the gods cannot resist.
Love. I am a conqueror, she a captive. I as fortunate as she fair. My greatness may answer her wants. And the gift of my mind, the modesty of hers, is it not likely then that she should love? Is it not reasonable?
You say that in love there is no reason, and therefore there can be no likelihood.
No more, Hephaestion. In this case, I will use my own counsel and all other thine advice. Thou mayest be a good soldier, but never good lover. Call my page.
And the page who was sent away earlier returns.
Sirrah, go presently to Appelles and will him to come to me without either delay or excuse.
And exit page.
In the mean season, to recreate my spirits, being so near, we will go see Diogenes and see where his tub is. Diogenes!
Who calleth?
Alexander. How happened it that you would not come out of your tub to my palace?
Because it was as far from my tub to your palace as from your palace to my tub.
Why then, dost thou owe no reverence to kings?
No,
Why so?
because they be no gods.
They be gods of the earth.
Yea, gods of earth.
Plato is not of thy mind.
I'm glad of it,
Why?
because I would have none of Diogenes' mind, but Diogenes.
If Alexander have anything that may pleasure Diogenes, let me know and take it.
Then take not from me that you cannot give me, the light of the world.
What dost thou want?
Nothing that you have,
I have the world at my command.
and I in contempt.
Thou shalt live no longer than I will.
But I will die whether you will or no.
How should one learn to be content?
Unlearn to covet.
Hephaestion, were I not Alexander, I would wish to be Diogenes.
He is dogged, but discreet. I cannot tell how sharp, with a kind of sweetness, full of wit, yet too wayward.
Diogenes, when I come this way again, I will both see thee and confer with thee.
Do.
Re-enter the page with Appelles.
But here cometh Appelles. How now, Appelles? Is Venus' face yet finished?
Not yet. Beauty is not so soon shadowed, whose perfection cometh not within the compass, either of cunning or of colour.
Well, let it rest unperfect, and come you with me, where I will show you that finished by nature that you have been trifling about by art.
And they exit end of act. So again, lots of there's love. There's some love. Some people who've been conquered, and they're quite fancied by these two conquerors. So I'm all sorts of short speeches there. Alexander asked for Hephaestion's opinion, and he didn't really have any. He didn't say anything at all. Went on for a while. How was that for you, Sarah? You got through that one quite well.
It was surprising because just the way my script was formatted, the speech started at the bottom of the page. So I was like, oh, I've got 2 or 3 lines here that I am reading. And then I scrolled up and I was like, oh, okay. He's going to go on a bit. I kind of enjoy the relationship between them because, you made reference to Tamburlaine earlier. I can't imagine anyone being this frank with Tamburlaine, honestly. The fact that Hephaestion is like able to say what he's really thinking to him is great. I mean, there's such a beautiful honesty and kind of bond between them, which you don't often see with these sort of great ruler types. So again, we're seeing a very human side of Alexander, not just through what he's saying about the fact that he's in love, but in the way that his friend feels able to talk to him. I think that's really, really fascinating.
And as a prelude to Alexander finally talking to Diogenes and that going really well. Gloria, I saw her hand earlier.
Yes, well, I don't know what happens to Hephaestion. I don't know if anyone else knows, but maybe Alexander killed him. But anyway, that's an unknown future. No, but I wanted to say, sorry, Sarah. I wanted to say that this play feels like Diogenes, a review. It's like all of Diogenes's best bits. When he goes looking for a man with a lantern, when he tells Alexander to stand out of his light, when, you know, it's just all the classic anecdotes about Diogenes. Lily's like, just put them all in. It's delightful.
Yeah, it does seem to be, and again, we don't have any technical entrances or exits in the script for Diogenes. He obviously they whip him out at a moment's notice. He just ta-da. I'm really interested in how that works practically. Other thoughts?
I just like the way that Alexander makes these utterances that really could be pretty tyrannical. She's a captive. I captured her. She is going to do what I want. In quite kind of vulnerable and adolescent. She'll like me, won't she?
Yes, it's like it's going. Well, yeah, it's you know, I've got her, but you know, is it right for me to you take advantage of this situation, my best friend, mate? Is that right? Is that okay? Can I get away with that?
And,
Will HR let me?
You're really not telling me what I want to hear. So give me advice about other things, okay? And I just won't talk about this with you.
Yeah, I'll find someone else. Again, enough of experts. After a while, I'm sure. Other thoughts, Alan?
I must admit, I'm really enjoying Diogenes on the basis he's the only one who speaks truth to power.
Mm.
You know, basically, you might own half the world, but you don't own my soul as well.
Well, you know, Alexander hasn't threatened to take his tub away from him yet, so who knows? Who knows? Ooh. You know.
Or turns around and says, "Roll out the barrel."
Other thoughts, Sarah?
I'm just talking when you were saying about how to stage Diogenes's tub. I've suddenly remembered there's a film. I think it might be The Women, but there's a 1930s big Hollywood film where I think it's Joan Crawford is in the bath, and she's got a pulley, and there's this like ruched curtain like that just drops down up and down over the bath, and when she wants to see someone she pulls the cord and it rises, and then when she's had enough of them she pulls it and it drops down again. And I'm just thinking that could be very funny in this context.
Yeah, at the moment in my mind, Diogenes is very Douglas Adamsy. That's just how I'm feeling about him. But we'll see. Okay, let's crack on into Act 3. We've got 3 scenes of Act 3 to do. We're not going to complete Act 3. We have this short scene where we return to the title character. So here we have Appelles, Campaspe, and attended by the Psyllus, who's there.
Lady, I doubt whether there be any colour so fresh that may shadow a countenance so fair.
Sir, I had thought you had been commanded to paint with your hand, not to gloss with your tongue. But as I have heard, it is the hardest tiling in painting to set down a hard favour, which maketh you to despair of my face, and then shall you have as great thanks to spare your labour as to discredit your art.
Mistress, you neither differ from yourself nor your sex, for knowing your own perfection, you seem to dispraise that which most men commend, drawing them by that mean into an admiration, where feeding themselves they fall into an ecstasy, your modesty being the cause of the one, and of the other your affections.
I am too young to understand your speech, though old enough to withstand your device. You have been so long used to colours, you can do nothing but colour.
Indeed, the colours I see, I fear will alter the colour I have. But come, madam, will you draw near, for Alexander will be here anon. Psyllus, stay you here at the window. If any inquire for me, answer non lubet esse domi.
And they exit into his painter's studio, as it were. Interesting thing here. I'm assuming I'm not that Alexander's commissioned this portrait of Campaspe. Interesting thing there. Interesting action there. Any thoughts about this little moment? In a sense, the scene is about the same scene that we're about to go into. It's essentially a continuation, but because the servant is left outside while they go inside. Eric, thoughts?
I don't remember which play it was, but I remember we were talking like because there was a painter or like a nobleman who was a painter and stuff, and it was Dr. Dodipole. That's how I remember. Where we were talking about how painting was also an analogy for like flirting and like, oh yes, paint her lips, her tongue, and that kind of stuff. So I don't know if that's like involved here or just like sort of. He's just praising her because she's his model.
There's something very male gazy about it all. Aliki.
There is, and she fends him off as if he's flirting. So
yeah, but it's flirting with the person who's being commissioned to paint from the other person who's there's a whole sort of layers to this gaze, as it were. So there's something very interesting going on there. Sarah.
She doesn't just fend him off. She has some stellar put downs. I mean, I thought, then shall you have as great a thanks to spare your labour as to discredit your art. And then you have been so long used to colours, you could do nothing but colour. I was like, ooh, get in there, Campaspe. No, I mean, that was really good. That was really good comeback. I mean, and also you can imagine this scene on stage. It would be so great because he's there, you talking about the male gaze, you've got this sort of classic trope of the male painter there, working away, being a maestro, and the sort of passive woman standing there absolutely stock still posing, as she's supposed to. And he's like all like over her and she's just like completely still, completely calm and just batting back everything that he sends to her. I just think that would be a great scene on stage.
Okay, the scene. It's technically scene 2, but it's effectively continuation of the action. They've gone inside. The servant's been left outside. So, Psyllus, you get a little speech before the action continues.
It is always my master's fashion, when any fair gentlewoman is to be drawn within, to make me stay without. But if he should paint Jupiter like a bull, like a swan, like an eagle, then must Phyllis with one hand grind colours and with the other hold the candle. But let him alone. The better he shadows her face, the more will he burn his own heart. And now, if a man could meet with Manes, who I dare say looks as lean as if Diogenes dropped out of his nose.
Enter
And here
Manes.
And here comes Manes, who hath as much meat in his maw as thou hast honesty in thy head.
Then I hope thou art very hungry.
They that know thee know that.
But dost thou not remember that we have certain liquor to confer withal?
Aye, but I have business. I must go cry a thing.
Why? What hast thou lost?
That which I never had, my dinner.
Foul lubber, wilt thou cry for thy dinner?
I mean, I must cry, not as one would say cry, but cry, that is, make a noise.
Why, fool, that is all one, for if thou cry, thou must needs make a noise.
Boy, thou art deceived. Cry hath a diverse significations and may be alluded to many things. Knave but one, and can be applied but to thee.
Profound Manes.
We cynics are mad fellows. Didst thou not find I did quip thee?
No, verily. Aye, why, what is a quip?
We great girders call it a short saying of sharp wit, with a bitter sense in a sweet word.
How canst thou thus divine, divide, define, dispute, and all on the sudden?
Wit will have his swing. I am bewitched, inspired, inflamed, infected.
Well then, will I not tempt thy gibing spirit?
Do not, Psyllus, for thy dull head will be but a grindstone for my quick wit, which, if thou whet with over thwarts, persisti actum est de te. I have drawn blood at one's brains with a bitter bob.
Let me cross myself, for I die if I cross thee.
Let me do my business. I myself am afraid lest my wit should wax warm, and then must it needs consume some hard head with fine pretty jests. I am sometimes in such a vein that for want of some dull pate to work on, I begin to gird myself.
The gods shield me from such fine fellow, whose words melt wits like wax.
Well then, let us to the matter. In faith, my master meaneth tomorrow to fly.
It's a jest.
Is it a jest to fly? Shouldest thou fly so? Soon thou shouldest repent it in earnest.
Well, I will be the crier.
Oh yea, oh yea, oh yea.
Oh yea, oh yea, oh yea.
All manner of men, women or children.
All manner of men, women or children.
That will come tomorrow into the marketplace.
That will come tomorrow into the marketplace.
Between the hours of 9 and 10.
Between the hours of 9 and 10.
Shall see Diogenes the Cynic.
Shall see Diogenes the Cynic.
Fly.
I do not think he will fly.
Tosh, say fly.
Fly!
Now, let us go, for I will not see him again till midnight. I have a back way into his tub.
Which way callest thou the back way when every way is open?
I mean to come in at his back.
Well, let us go away, that we may return speedily.
And they exit, and yes, there's some good highbrow humor there, as well as some quite nicely lowbrow stuff. It's interesting that again the way the verbal fencing goes between them, and there's that sense of, because of who his master is, Psyllus is sort of trying to. Is you know, because his master's a painter, that he's not quite as good as the other one is, or he's trying to be as good as it. There's a sort of chip on his shoulder a bit because his master isn't quite as learned as the other ones is, and that kind of back and forth, just the way they're going at each other. You know, what is a quip? Might be overstating that, but yeah, and then yeah, lots of fun stuff. I do not think he will fly. Touch, say fly, fly. You know.
But Phyllis is very cynical about his master. He's, you know, when he's gone, when there's a night, when he's painting a woman, I wait outside.
I mean to come in at his back. Yeah, there's lots of very subtle wordplay and suggestions there. Which we've had in other plays, but haven't had for a while, actually, it has to be said. Yeah, additional thoughts on this? We've only got one more scene to go for the this session, so okay, let's go into the next scene. The only stage direction from the original that we've got is that there is Appelles and Campaspe on stage. Are they discovered? How are they seen? We can make some decisions. But anyway, Appelles and Campaspe.
I shall never draw your eyes well, because they blind mine.
Why then, paint me without my eyes, for I am blind.
Were you ever shadowed before of any?
No, and would you could so shadow me now, that might not be perceived of any.
It were pity, but that so absolute a face should furnish Venus' temple amongst these pictures.
What are these pictures?
This is Leda, whom Jove deceived in likeness of a swan.
A fair woman, but a foul deceit.
This is Alcmena, unto whom Jupiter came in shape of Amphitryon, her husband, and begat Hercules.
A famous son, but an infamous act.
Well, he might do it, because he was a god.
Nay, therefore it was evil done, because he was a god.
This is Danae, into whose prison Jupiter drizzled a golden shower and obtained his desire.
What gold can make one yield to desire?
This is Europa, whom Jupiter ravished. This, Antiopa.
Were all the gods like this Jupiter?
There were many gods in this like Jupiter.
I think in those days, love was well ratified among men on earth when lust was so full authorized by the gods in heaven.
Nay, you may imagine there were women passing amiable when there were gods exceeding amorous.
Were women never so fair, men would be false.
Were women never so false, men would be fond.
What counterfeit is this, Appelles?
This is Venus, the goddess of love.
What? Be there also loving goddesses?
This is she that hath power to command the very affections of the heart.
How is she hired? By prayer, by sacrifice, or bribes?
By prayer, sacrifice, and bribes.
What prayer?
Vows irrevocable.
What sacrifice?
Hearts ever sighing, never dissembling.
What bribes?
Roses and kisses. But were you never in love?
No, nor love in me.
Then have you injured many.
How so?
Because you have been loved of many.
Flattered, perchance, of some.
It is not possible that a face so fair and a wit so sharp, both without comparison, should not be apt to love.
If you begin to tip your tongue with cunning, I pray dip your pencil in colours and fall to that you must do, not that you would do.
And they exit. Fascinating takedown on the history of art there. I mean, genuinely very effective takedown on the subjects of so much art that exists. Of just going, it's all a bit rapey. You know, have you noticed that the artist just totally just going, yeah, that's not getting it at all. That's just a fascinating scene, absolutely fascinating, and yeah. Thoughts from the room on that one? Aliki, Eric.
What Sarah said before about Campaspe's wit, I mean, here she is again, and that closing put down is so beautiful.
Eric.
I was just going to say that maybe this is foreshadowing. And no, maybe just, you know, like, hey, hints of like, hey, a bit rapey gods, you know.
Yeah. Alexandra, you were saying?
I just muttered, all the same god as well.
Yeah.
Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. But yeah. No, that was all.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that point, you know, he is the person with ultimate power. Who is the person in this play who has ultimate power? It's Alexander, and all sorts of, you know, threading and thoughts on that. Yeah, so this is really very intelligent stuff coming out of this play. It's really interesting. Helen.
One of the things that I got from it, which I've never come across anywhere else, is calling the art of taking a likeness shadowing. That I hadn't met before. I don't know if anybody else has.
Not quite in this context. I mean, I think it's for images and reflections and things like that. So mirrors and things can be your shadow. So it sort of fits within a spectrum of meaning. But no, I don't think I've heard it used in this fashion. I don't know if others have. Alexandra.
I have heard references, or read rather, references to one's picture being called one's shadow. So that might be, this might just be like a very slight extension of something that was used, but not in exactly this way.
Lynn.
Right. I mean, the shadow meaning an image of something I've read before. So shadow and reflection are kind of synonyms. We don't, shadow in this period doesn't mean necessarily what we think it means, but I think calling painting shadowing does give it a kind of a little bit darker valence, makes it a little ominous.
Eric, then Lois.
I was going to say, well, in the context, considering that, it's philosophers, so on and so forth, and we've got Plato, who obviously wrote about art, and sort of the, shadowing is in like sort of art is an imitation of an imitation, so it's a shadow of a shadow, basically.
Lois.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking of it's probably a bit later, but I think in Donne's will, he bequeathed his picture in shadow, which seems to be one that uses chiaroscuro. And it seems to be one, in fact, that was made when he was quite a young man. So probably about this period. I don't know. I mean, the use of shadow in portraits was still fairly new and I think slightly controversial. I mean, Elizabeth preferred to be portrayed without shadows.
Yeah. Okay. So this play is dancing around themes and ideas. I mean, not a lot has happened per se. Something happened beforehand. There's some prisoners came in from that, and the Alexander's been having some discussions with some philosophers and has fallen in love and is obviously commissioning a portrait of his love. For his own private use, and that's about as far as we've got. But we are halfway through the play, pretty much. Certainly we're as far as we're going to get today. So there's all sorts of things. I mean, thinking about this is an indoor setup. This is a relatively intimate space. It's a place where ideas can potentially thrive. It's calling back in my mind to a lot of the sort of those Tudor interludes, which are much more interested in ideas than out and out action. Lots of really good comedy, lots of stuff. As ever, with the mind of thinking about how to perform this across different mediums. What are we really liking? What are we not liking? What might we play with? I think there's lots of readings in this which move in slightly different contradictory directions at times, and that's really interesting. So we're going to go into final thoughts now. The play at the halfway mark. We might not put the interval quite here, but if we have an interval, how are we thinking? So Sarah, I'll go to you first because you had some of the biggest speeches. How are you feeling about the play so far?
Oh, I love it. I love plays like this. I love plays where people are so emotionally intelligent and stand around doing a lot of talking and examining their feelings. And you so rarely get it at this kind of era. And when people are witty about it as well, it's just like, oh. So it's totally not what I was expecting. I was like, oh, okay, Alexander the Great. Okay. Get me armor on. And I'm just loving it. It's really refreshing. Lyly is clearly, I've never come across him before. He's clearly really emotionally intelligent. He writes cracking dialogue. It would be very easy to stage this. It would be very easy to stage in kind of any period you want. You could totally do the whole Noel Coward thing if you wanted. You could put it in modern dress. Also, there are like some of Campaspe's put downs. I was immediately minded of Jane Austen and the shadowing. I was thinking, oh yeah, there was that whole Regency fashion for taking people's silhouettes, and I could just suddenly see her in an Empire Line gown, and Appelles in his breeches. You could stage it in any era, I think, and you could do so much with it. And that is the great thing about plays actually where there isn't a lot of action, but there is loads of psychology and emotion going on, and that they're really easy to stage. And provided you've obviously got good actors and a good director, they're really, really compelling.
I was thinking of hiring just rubbish people.
Just hiring,
I mean, that's always the plan. That's how I end up getting a part.
But you could just it would always be compelling. Because it speaks so directly to a contemporary audience, I think.
Yeah, though it would mangle one or two really good lines, Appelles just leapt out at me as a photographer during that. You know, I just see him snapping away, witty repartee, what he thinks is witty, and yeah, there was something quite at times there, possibly more than actually the is the intention. But hey, let's roll with it. Alan, final thoughts?
Oh, I mean, it's enjoyable. I think, with the exception of the long speeches, which turn up 3 or 4 times, an awful lot of the rest of it is very, very fast crosstalk. And I think with rehearsal would actually work extremely. I mean, that last sequence between Appelles and Campaspe, you know, needs to be done, I think, very much at pace. You know, it's almost a fencing match in the way it comes across. And I think it is almost, you know, thrust and riposte. The other one that I'm not sure whether it's part of the motivation, but I have a vague recollection that Hephaestion was actually the golden youth who Alexandra was incredibly enamored of, and after whose demise he went into a decline. But that may be based on a rather rusty recollection of the myths of the period.
Well,
and that could add an extra edge to the way that seems to have a bit of a down on Alexander forming any sort of relationship with Campaspe.
I think that's a very, very, very good point, and I think that's very, very playable with this text. I think there's a lot that's potentially there, or could be made to be there. I really like that. Helen, final thoughts?
Yes, my main thoughts were about the staging. When I got hold of the text, it was, as I say, I had an enormous amount of stage directions and stuff that had obviously been added in a very modern period. And amongst it, they were constantly shifting the scene from the palace to the marketplace to here, there, and everywhere. And I took that out, partly because it wasn't original, and partly because I disagreed with it so profoundly. Because I see this as a single playing area. The scene never changes, and the artist studio is the within part with the curtain. And Diogenes' tub is stuck up against a wall somewhere.
If we can afford a lift, I just see it coming up out of the floor.
Well, fair enough. But I mean, I don't know whether I was right to take it all out or not, but it was obviously a bit strange, because I mean, one set stage direction said in Alexander's palace, then in brackets later in the marketplace. You know, I mean, the thing was silly.
Yeah, I think that, yeah, there are areas of logic to some of where some of the action is, but the idea of being very specific about some of this is just going to bite you on the behind. I think you're right, because it doesn't quite seem to follow absolute logic. You know, action moves, and it moves quite quickly from one place to another, which might as well be the same place. And it's that sort of single location, well, single staging logic to it. I think any scene changes here just slows it all down. Lois, final thoughts?
Well, I suppose in a modern production with reasonable sort of stage lighting, you could just have acting areas designated by lighting, which would be the simplest way to do this. Yeah, I like Lyly's plays. I mean, I find that often on the page, they look really difficult, especially the long speeches with all the examples from natural history. But when you read them, they're so beautifully patterned. They tell you really how to say them. And they're very good for internal dialogue. You know, on the one hand, I should do this, but oh no, I'd better do that instead, you know, all that kind of thing. So yeah, it's very playable.
Yeah, I was going to say, yes, we might look at trimming some of those longer speeches down a bit, but they actually flowed very well, and they felt you know, that it's not an obstruction. it's not like, oh my God, will this speech never end? And considering it's sight read, Sarah managed with all those long speeches incredibly well, made them flow really nicely, and those are the bits of the text which I feel actually needs to actually move at a greater lick than some of the dialogue does. Actually, I will go back to Sarah because we did refer to that briefly. Sarah, you're muted.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo what Lois said there, because I mean, those speeches were long, but they were so, I mean, I could have read them better. I was kind of kicking myself because especially that one of Mellippus or whatever his name was, I mean, it was just so funny. I could have done it more justice, but even reading it cold, it was so beautifully structured that it kind of gave you a way in, so that it's all there in the writing.
Aliki, Alexandra the Great, final thought from you?
I agree with everyone so far. I've really enjoyed it. I don't really have anything much to say about Alexander as Alexander that I haven't said before. My only concern with staging it for a modern audience is all of these layers of meaning that we are missing quite a few of ourselves. And what would you do with the Latin? And I mean, who knows who Diogenes is anymore? This crowd does, but I don't know.
That's a good point. I mean, the play does introduce all the various philosophers and does set them up reasonably well. But I think you're absolutely the question of the Latin. It does use Latin in a way that it expects the audience to know what it means, and so that is a question that we might solve with translation or just let it go and just live with it. We shall see. That's a futurist problem. Elizabeth, how was it all for you? Final thoughts?
Yeah, I thought that the play played with gender really well. There was a bit of misogyny to it that was a bit problematic. I think would be a bit of a problem for a director who was deciding to put the play on. I loved the philosophers in it. I thought the philosophers were fantastic. There was a quote in the chat. Someone said, "A yawn of philosophers." I'm not sure if that's real, but it sounds fantastic. I really echo what Alan said about the myths of the period and how they permeate the text. And also the potentiality of the play and its characters. I think it works very well as an ensemble piece. Campaspe, we're getting a picture of Campaspe already, but not anything in depth yet. I like what Lois said about the play being very playable. I also thought it was lyrical, very easy to read, and it was kind of like light. The language was really light, so I do like Lily. It's my first Lily play, and I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting point about the misogyny. I mean, I think we've got misogynistic characters. Whether the play itself is a question for perhaps once we've got to the end of asking that question, because I think it's that Alexander and Hephaestion scene is perhaps something that you can look at and ask questions of to the audience with. I mean, that's really, really interesting. I think you're right. It's interesting that actually Campaspe is, we haven't got really any interiority to her yet. So in fact, I'll go to Gloria. Your character or for the play itself?
But just the play. I mean, I love it. It's got philosophy and art and fools and food or lack thereof, but hopefully it's kind of it's like delayed gratification of food. Hopefully someone's going to eat at some point, and lots of wordplay. It's very nice. And also, yes, with Campaspe, I guess she seems to be at the moment there more to create a love triangle. If you've got Alexander and Campaspe, and then Appelles seems to, whether he's flattering her just, because it's his job to, or whether he is as struck by her as Alexander was. No groundbreaking thoughts though from me.
It's fine. Stating obvious and open things and just saying them out loud is an important part of the process. Don't try to be original. Original's boring. That's not a comment on anybody's statement so far. That's just a general thing that I say to people. Eric, final thoughts?
Yeah, I'm enjoying, as you know, we said, the dialogue and the stuff. But what I found interesting was that like their Campaspe is a prisoner, as is Timoclea, and they don't beg at any point. They don't have this thing of, please let us go. They're just like, at the beginning of the play, there's just this mention of sort of, I hope that we don't have any miserable outcome from this, basically. And yeah, also I just remembered that I can't remember where I read this or heard this, but a philosopher's banquet in Athens was actually a thing. They would have sort of collections of, like, I think it was a gathering or a symposium of like the most important citizens in Athens, you know, the ones who contributed the most, and they basically ate for free. So yeah, that's a bit unfair to the servants.
Poor things. Servants always get it so hard. Lynn, final thoughts?
Yeah, it's very smart, isn't it? And the issue that I'm thinking about is one we haven't explored too deeply. When Hephaestion and Alexandra are having their debate, Hephaestion points out, well, yes, you're the most powerful person on earth. You're the commander, you're the captain of the football team, whatever. But you can't make her love you. You can have her, you can possess her, basically, you know, you can sexually assault her, but you can't make her love you. And he says, but I'm so desirable. I'm Alexander. Wouldn't it be reasonable for her to love me? And Hephaestion points out, you just said love and reason don't go together. So if that love plot is the main plot and the philosophers are sort of background, then that's the question. Who is more powerful, Jove or Venus? And the philosophers are there just to basically show that when it comes to this central force in human life, the power of human desire, philosophy is absolutely useless. As is brute strength.
Wow.
Excellent. Alexandra, final thoughts?
I remember reading about, actually, I don't know if it was reading about it or if it was looking at the School of Athens, the painting, and going, why has no one made a film of this? Or, you know, a play. I think I might have been reading about Diogenes. So this is my dream come true. But at the same time, while I do appreciate, it put me in mind of Stoppard more than Coward, actually. Where, you know, things that are quite complex and sort of very deep philosophical considerations, like that are, you know, like some of the answers that the philosophers give to Alexander, you know, can be brought into a medium that is not didactical, and treated in a way that is not, hey audience, why don't we pause the action so as to teach you some things. So loving that. But I also think that, like Stoppard, like Coward, and like philosophy, this can be a very hard sell to people who wouldn't, you know, if you were putting this on as a production, people who don't feel a resonance with that because they don't necessarily feel like that speaks to them. You know, where it's not necessarily that one is unintelligent, it's that is not the sort of humor that one goes for. And so I think that would be something of a challenge in putting it on, because there isn't a very exciting plot. I mean, there's hardly any plot thus far. So how would we really bring out the plot side of this, or the, I guess, the stakes and the necessity for action? And I'm wondering, I'm looking forward to seeing how, you know, the second half of this goes, because it could go in either direction, obviously. And if it's, if it suddenly picks up, that might be fantastic. If it doesn't, then it would be very niche. So it's not that it's bad either way.
Aliki wanted to leap in there. I've got a thought as well. So Aliki first.
I want to leap in and sort of follow up on something that Lynn said, which was about how Alexander can't impose his will on love. The object of his love, Campaspe, her first lines are, I hope it shall, if it be such a thing to be Alexander, I hope it shall be no miserable thing to be a virgin. If he save our honors, it is more than to restore our goods. Rather, he should preserve our fame than our lives. And her 3 lines are, please don't rape us, please don't rape us, please don't rape us. Right?
Following on from Alexandra's comments just there, I mean, talking about this being very niche, I think it's got a certain kind of market. It's not a barnstorming piece. It's not the kind of thing where you try and take it to a certain kind of audience. But I mean, Coward and Stoppard can fill a reasonable sized West End theatre perfectly well. And so, yeah, I think it might end up being played to a very middle class audience, but I think there's definitely an audience for it. Or for that matter, a studio sized. I think it's an intimate text because it is about ideas, and so it's in terms of marketing it and how that goes out there and who buys it, for that matter, rather than necessarily who we try and sell it to. And I appreciate Alexandra wasn't trying to be, but the question of who's buying it is a good question, and that's a question that we need to ask on a practical level. If we want people to buy tickets, some plays need to be marketed to the right audience, because otherwise you end up with a very pissed off audience, and hey, it's going to be all full of barrels of fun, well, there's a barrel. Emma, final thoughts?
All the bits that I wasn't in and I was just listening to, I was laughing an awful lot. I just had a lot of fun with this. Obviously all the wittiness, all the puns, all the characterization of the philosophers. And then the bit we just read, reading Appelles there, it was such a brilliant scene, and I look forward to seeing what happens next. You kind of got this classic romantic comedy setup, artist and muse model there, but it's so much deeper than that as well. It's just a really, really good takedown of misogyny. Appelles is throwing all his usual tricks at her, and she's just completely taking him down, and he's being made to look really stupid. And the play is full of cleverness like that. It's really surprising and it's great.
Alexandra?
Yeah, there is cleverness on several fronts, on several levels, which is wonderful. And I think that's what made me think of Stoppard. There's linguistic cleverness. There's cleverness in how to get yourself out of problems. There's cleverness in a philosophical sense. That's et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, as I was saying in the chat, I'm not saying this isn't doable. I think it's fantastic. It's just how do you, getting that, it's not getting it across to an audience, it's getting the bums on seats first.
Yeah, it's I think Lynn said earlier, but I think the Zoom took it out. I think you said what was the Tom? Arcadia. It's very Arcadia-esque in that sense. It's on that slightly more harder to sell end of the Tom Stoppard spectrum, of which there is I think there is very much a Tom Stoppard spectrum of ease of ticket sales, and you need to get some celebrity casting in, and ideally do it at the National, and then go from there, because they've got the facilities to do the cast size. I think the biggest problem, actually, on a fundamental thing, is the potential size of the cast to the potential size of your audience. The advantage with Tudor interludes, for example, the earlier stuff, is that the cast size is very small. So if you don't sell many tickets, it doesn't matter too much. Whereas something like this, where you do need a cast in double figures, probably, you might be able to turn some of this on a sixpence. It might be possible. I haven't really looked into the logistics of it. You might be able, because a lot of the philosophers don't interact with other people, and there's these people who could swap a hat in a second and be somebody else. But I think it would be doing the play possibly a disservice to do it that way. Any other? We've gone around the room, but if there's any additional thoughts bounced off other people's thoughts, we have a minute or two in lieu. If anyone's got anything else, Eric.
Basically, no, I was sort of like laughing when laughs were there, but it was just basically me going, what the like, what? It just, some parts of it are like, like arguing and very circular arguments going round and round, and then like, just tying you in a knot till you figure out what's going on. But I think obviously on a stage it would work better.
Yeah, there are one or two unforced laughs there as well. I think there's a sequence on golden showers which just doesn't come across in the way perhaps it was intended, or perhaps does. I don't know. I think on that note, I better end this session, unless anyone wants to leap in with anything else now. This is first of two episodes looking at this. I wouldn't be surprised if we come back to it for a second look sometime in the future. It's definitely one we could do in one session. That always makes life engaging on that front. So hopefully we'll come back to this sometime. If you have any thoughts or comments, you can put them in the comments. Let us know your thoughts. If there's anything we've missed or anything we're just flat out wrong, put it in there and we may notice, and that'll be fab. All that remains is to thank all the wonderful readers and say farewell.
Bye.
Bye.